Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Your Next 50. Ladies, we're here to tell you that it's your time. Be intentional with your choices. Don't waste another more day hiding in your stories. You can reclaim your personal power and be happy while doing it. So important. And this podcast will show you how. I am Sylvia, and you will notice that my dear friend and co host Jenny Mitchell is not here today, but I am joined by a wonderful guest. And this episode, you have to listen to this one. We're going to be talking about science and spirituality and bringing money into this. And I am so excited. Thank you, Jess, for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here. We were just chatting beforehand about how it already feels like we are kindred spirits and know each other. And I think you have this amazing gift of just all the right people come to you. So I'm really, really excited to connect today.
I think it's the color. If you're watching us on YouTube, because you can watch us, we're into turquoise today.
It's a turquoise kind of day, and it goes well with the purple of all the branding.
It does. It does. Jess, on this podcast, we like our guests to use your own words and describe, tell us some more about yourself. I thought you were from out west, and you're not. There was
that's the big secret.
Illusion. You shattered my illusion.
Should have kept my mouth shut. So I am what am I? I wear a lot of hats like you.
You do.
And I try to tell people not to get like too caught up in like, what do I call myself? Because often that's like a perfectionism thing. But we also have to have like a bio, right? So I have been calling myself a creative strategist or a success strategist for creatives and entrepreneurs. I work with creative people, meaning what I mean by that is anybody who makes anything that matters to them. So it can be art, it can be courses, it can be pies, it can be, anything at all that comes from some place that feels like a calling. I work with those people as well as entrepreneurs and spiritual entrepreneurs. And what I do is, how people always say success is an inside job? Mm-hmm. I fully believe that. Yes. And I'm the person who helps them do that inside job. I am the inner work person. And I think that although there are a million strategies out there, we were just chatting about this, you and I, in order to, find your version of success, you will not be able to do that if you do not have the absolute compass and dial on your own stuff and like who you are, where you're coming from, what your, not just your goals, but like that soulful creative essence. If you don't have that intact, it is very easy to get swept off by everybody else's strategy. So you find yourself overwhelmed, burnt out, or like many cases, I've done this myself, making a bunch of money, but you're like, this feels gross, wrong. Yes. And we can just sense that in ourselves. I'm the person, like whenever I hear people say like something's off, I feel called to more, like they want more money, they want more opportunities or, success. That is my cue that if what they're doing is still leaving them feeling like they want more of any of those things, that's my cue to come in and start working on some of the inner stuff. So I think of it like inner landscape work. So that I have a strategy for that. So I call myself a strategist. I'm not a coach. I'm a strategist, and I help people find their own strategies.
What works for them, right?
Exactly.
Before we go on this, because we will talk all about this today, you are also an author, and I met Jess in a Facebook group, and she was talking about a book that was coming out, or it was an anniversary of her first book, perhaps, and it was a post, and I was like, wait a second. And then I ruffled through my daughter's books that she had just received from the library. We had gone that week. And there was Jess's book. And it was it was the crocodile one. And you are
the
author.
Vintage Keating. Yeah. So it's true.
Keating. You are an author. And
I buried the lead a bit. Yeah. I'm an author. The technical, like the bundle. I'm an author. I'm a scientist. I am a full-time creative entrepreneur myself. Yes. Before I did any of this, like trying to guide people stuff. And I've had.
And you told me you're a past singer.
Oh yeah, like a creative. I was a photographer. Like explore all of these things. And the theme of my life has been people around me telling me to pick a lane, and me being like, no. I think, and I always share this story, and I'll share it again really briefly here. Like when I was in university, so I have a master's of science. I went to Guelph University, actually. If you're Canadian, you'll know that spot. So I specialized in science, And at the same time, I knew I wanted to do a master's in both science and philosophy at the same time. And I knew that I could bring those ideas together. And of course, they were like, that's not a thing. You're not doing that.
No.
But what did I do? Like, I was a pain in the ass. I went to the dean and I signed the papers and stuff. And I remember having this conversation with my advisor, who was a fantastic animal behaviorist. And I said, you know what? Like, I'm however many years old, 20 years old here, and I'm straddling these different departments. I had like 4 or 5 different things that I just adored. And I was like, I have to leave this place at some point and have a job, like have a career
Yeah.
that, like, a calling. And I said, like, I cannot imagine just picking a lane. And what he told me has stuck with me ever since. And I know it's been so helpful to so many other multi-passionate people, is that there are people who are born to live in the valleys of the world and they love it. They are meant to specialize. They are meant to like root right in and play those lanes and bring all this amazing stuff together in those lanes and in those valleys. But he said, but a few people are meant to be on the mountaintops, straddling the different mountains,
Mm.
and then you can see the entire landscape. So he's like, you're not,
Lovely.
yeah, he's like, you're not all over the map. You are the map. So just keep going. And he was like, I guarantee you're going to have to create a career for yourself. There is not a job description that will satisfy you. And from that point,
Hmm.
that's when I realized, like, I started to become an author, which led to me being, you know, an illustrator and an artist, which led to me being a speaker, then which led to me kind of being here. And what I really
So
want to convey to
wonderful.
people is like, now I can't fathom being a valley person. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if that's what lights somebody up, good for them. But for me, my gift is in being able to see all these different fields, and now being able to speak to, you know, like, I'm a creativity expert because I have this background, for example,
Yeah.
in all of these different fields. It's all creativity, whether it's writing, art,
Yeah.
sculpture, singing, science, it's all creativity. But now I have all of this extra science stuff and spirituality stuff. I have a shamanic background as
Mm.
well. So I can bring that all of these worlds together. And the neat thing about that is there is something there for everybody.
There really
Like,
is,
I
because I
love it.
resonate with your posts so much, and other people resonate on different aspects of it. And how wonderful that you had that mentor telling you
Oh
that
my
as a
God,
young
I
age,
know.
because I started in music, as many of our listeners
Mm,
know, and then went into management, did an MBA, and then at 40 I retrained and became a doula and started a doula agency.
wow.
And now in my 50s, I'm writing a new chapter, and we were talking about before is I'm not quite sure what that chapter
Yeah.
is supposed to be, and I
And
have all
that's
of these,
okay.
and that's okay. But
Yeah.
I wasn't able to sit well with all of that, and I think I have come to that point now,
Hmm.
where it's okay that my path is not linear. And I love that you said I love the valleys and the mountains. That
Yeah.
what a
It
great
was such a
picture.
life changing. And I mean, in the moment, you're like, okay. And now,
Yeah.
like 20 years on or
Well, I
whatever,
think yeah,
what a
we need du
pivotal.
recul. We need to look
Yeah.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
where we are
And
now.
I think when you say, like, I truly believe nobody's path is linear. Even if you're a person who's like 5 years old, I want to be an astronaut, and you
Mm,
walk that path that's kind of there, like, astronauts generally have to do certain things, right?
yeah.
Even if you do that, though, the inner process that's going on, it's always a spiral. Nothing in
Yes.
this universe is not a spiral. Like, that's why people always say, like, if I do healing work with somebody, they'll say, like, oh, I thought I had healed this, but it came back. And it's like, of course it did. It's a spiral. You're meant to go
Ah.
deeper now. Like, we're not, like, you can't stamp it and be like, now I'm this. Like, that's not how it works. And I think that's one of the things, this is like a bit of a tangent, but that's one of the things that I want to be really aware of all the time. Because unfortunately, in marketing, especially right now in the online business world, that stamp, that quick fix, that quantum leap is a really sexy way of selling. And I personally don't buy a single bit of it, because nothing happens quickly in nature except injury or maybe wildfires,
Mm,
right? Destructive things
yes.
happen quickly. Healing and creativity. I just
A
see creativity.
lifetime.
Exactly. And I think being
Mm,
okay with that. And that's one of the hardest things for me, because I am the most impatient son of a bee that you will find. I really am. And I mean, you'd think I'd be good at it now by, 15 years as an author. We finish a book and have to wait 2 years to see it. Like,
yes, that's so
I'm just,
true. Yeah.
I suck at it, but reminding myself. And that's why I love, like, the spiritual side of, like, shamanic work, because it's all just nature. Shamanism is just nature. It's just plunking a lens of nature on top of how we live and seeing that things take
Mm.
time. Like you right now, you're feeling like, oh, what's next? I don't know. You can sense it. You
Yeah.
know what's happening and you can feel these shifts happening. But being okay with that mystery, there's so much power there. And I used to be somebody who would try to like bulldoze. And I mean, I still am. Let's be real. Like I try to catch myself, but that's like baked into the personality after 30 some, 40 some years, right?
Yeah.
So I think if people are listening and they like want to embrace that openness that you're showing here, it's about being patient with yourself for not being patient. Do you know
Well,
what I
that
mean?
impatience comes up so much, right? And one of
Yeah.
my spiritual mentors was saying, be like a tree, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, that groundedness, and
Yeah.
nature is call my name nature. I'm a mystic, nature
Yep.
mystic.
Me too.
The tree for me, I have a big one right out here. And I'm like, that's a wonderful reminder for me to
Yeah.
stand tall, right? When the wind is blowing me
You
all
can
over the
move like
place, I can
this.
move, but I will
Yeah,
not
but you're
break,
rooted.
right?
We have
Some of
a
my branches will fall, but
yeah,
yeah.
well, and I mean, and there's also even like the transition of the leaves and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
everything you want to learn about life and creativity, I'm convinced you could learn it from a tree.
Yeah. I
In Money
agree.
Awakening, I do soul journeys for each of we have like libraries where I'm awakening a different archetype in people or
Yeah, this is your
helping to.
course, the
This
Money
is my course,
Awakening.
yeah.
This is your
Money
course. We hadn't
Awakening.
mentioned it before, but you came out
Um,
with this amazing course just
yeah,
recently this summer.
I'm obsessed with it, and I'm trying to walk the walk of promoting it and marketing it the way that the energy of the program is dictating, which is not
Mm.
to be like, oh my God, doors are closing. Like, would I sell more?
Yeah, I haven't seen
100%.
that from you at all. I
And
haven't seen
it's
that at
neat
all.
because I had like trepidation about it because one of the things I teach people to do is to actually tune into the energy of the thing they're making. Right? Like, because that can
Mm.
change things. If I was doing a different course, maybe I would market differently. Like, maybe I would need more of
Sure.
that energy. But I think for me, I know right now, at least, my role in my industries of what I do is to be that grounding, peaceful, like, oh no, you don't force. Like, you're not going to think that you need this urgent quantum leap. There's no quantum leap to be found. It's
Let's
all
talk
this
about the
unfolding.
quantum leaps just
Oh
because there
man,
are so many
I
coaches, and I
I have
got caught up
strong
into
feelings.
it. I
Yeah, I have
got caught
strong
up.
feelings. I did
And I
too.
started buying books,
Yep.
and some
Yep.
of the people we know talk about
Yeah.
quantum leaps all the
Yep.
time. And then I started feeling not enough, that I was not getting
Yep.
those quantum leaps. And there are
And
some
that's the
people in
trick.
business that go from 0 to six
Yep.
figures or even seven figures
Absolutely.
in a year or two. But then you start comparing, which you always say don't
Mhm.
do, not feeling enough, that I'm doing the wrong things. And then we start investing our money in places we shouldn't be because of that.
Yep.
That coach will
Because of
help
that
me
feeling of
to
energy.
get
Yeah.
the quantum leaps. And you are, and I quote, the
Yeah.
anti-quantum leap mentor.
That's right. Yeah, I
Tell me
am.
more.
So, and again, this is not to poo-poo anybody's, like, if it's what lights them up, I think we all have aligned soul paths. I think that many people who are marketing quantum leaps are not on theirs, but there are some who
Mm.
are. So this
Yeah.
is not me saying like, I don't agree with this for my role in what I'm here to do. And I know that from my perspective as a scientist and as a spiritual, like whatever, teacher, mentor, I don't believe that quantum leaps actually exist. And here's why.
Mm.
Because again, first of all, in nature, there is no quantum leap. There is
No.
always I would call them like pre-incident indicators, meaning like before there's a fire, there's a spark. Before there's a spark, there is
Mm.
heat. Before there is heat, there is so I would rather help teach somebody learn how to recognize those really small yet momentous shifts. And that's something I'm quite good at in myself. Like I can know, like you're feeling like something's happening, but I
Mm.
can't quite put a finger on it. That's a little inchworm step.
Right.
And if you are not aware of those steps, you very well might wake up one day and think, I've had a quantum leap. But it's just because you weren't actually deeply in
We
tune with
weren't
those
aware.
steps. Right. And
Mm.
again, I know it sounds like I'm like bad mouthing quantum leaps, but from my perspective and what I'm here to share is that there is so much more power in being able to sit peacefully and quietly in a state of like what appears to be non motion and
Mhm.
recognize just how much is happening then. Because
Yes.
again, like you said, what happens when you get sucked into this quantum leap? Like, let's be real, it has become like a freaking healing arms race out
Yeah.
there. Like,
Yes.
I'm the best healer. I'm the deepest this. I'm the
Yes.
whatever. There's a whole lot of absolutes out there. And in general, again, the scientist in me is like, those statements can't be true. You can't claim that you're like the thing. You just can't. Like, I mean, you can say it and like it's good that you're confident, but like
Yeah.
that's as meaningless as like hats are the best accessory. Like, okay, sure. Like if
For
you
you,
believe
they don't look good on me. They
right,
just
right.
don't.
And like
Yeah.
there's this line, I just remembered this line. So I've done like comedy writing. A lot of my kids' books are
Okay.
comedies and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And there's this line, if you buy the premise, then you buy the bit. That is a stand-up comedian term where if a comedian's on a stage and he can sell you a premise of a joke, the very first part of the joke, the first line,
Mm,
you're going to buy the whole joke. You're going to be
right.
like, awesome joke.
Love it.
And that's what I see happening now with this quantum leap stuff, where people come out and they're like, I had a quantum leap, or like, here's to get your quantum leap. They're giving you a premise that there's a quantum leap. And if you buy into that, which you don't have to do, you're then going to want to purchase whatever thing is going to
Yes.
enable that. But
Yeah.
having been down, like, you're like me, this is not your first rodeo. And there is nothing wrong with wanting transformation or wanting change and growth. But to me, it does not occur in a quantum leap. We
Yeah.
can have inner shifts that occur quickly, but that's an inner shift. That is not going to make you
Mm.
100K in a day.
No, I
And
love
like, it's just not.
looking, and if we look at their businesses, and Denise Duffield talks about this a lot,
Mm,
and if you've listened, I talk about her. She always talks about that consistency, or that just always being, no matter what that consistency is
yeah.
for you, but always just showing up. Every
Yeah,
week
it's
she's
that
been
growth
showing up, and
mindset.
even the quantum leaps. If you look at those people's businesses, they have been active. And you said
Yeah.
non-motion. There is
There's
always
always
motion.
motion.
Always
Everything's
motion,
always in
which
motion. Yeah.
leads to the up leveling, right? Which
Yeah.
leads to that. Yeah, I love
And
that. So,
I just
mm,
think with Money Awakening, for example, I really had to hold that space to not be that person who, because again, like, I know my program, it's incredible. I know that, and I see it every day and the changes in there. And the funny thing is, the group of amazing women that are there now, almost daily, there's a post saying like, there's something different about this space because I don't
mm,
feel like my body is like in peril doing this work. I feel like I have time. Like, we don't have check-ins. We don't have like, because people can be accountable for their own path. I'm
mhm,
never in there being like, so what's the latest win? Because it
right.
doesn't serve, it serves some groups. It does not serve this. And they all told me that the marketing of it felt like a bit of a release from that hustle. And now
Mhm.
again, there are mentors, like especially like marketing people. They told me like, you need to put a firm deadline on this. You need to close. You need
Yeah.
urgency. And it's like, you know what? That is right for some people, 100%. But for me and the energy of this program, which is all
Mm,
about tuning into you and realizing like you're on your own freaking path, man, and it's
yeah.
good enough. It didn't make sense. It did not make sense for me to do a big song and dance about, oh, 4 hours left before like
It
whatever.
seems very we're moving away from that type of
I think
marketing, and
we
if you're in
are.
business, and that's very, I feel very masculine.
Yeah.
Had a teacher, a male, and that's his whole premise, and the
Yeah.
pain points and all of that. So I really get that. I love that, you're tuning into yourself to do the marketing
Yeah, and that's the
that
point.
you
Like,
that you
we're not
desire.
saying that, masculine structures and like
No,
we need them. That's wonderful. But too many people, again, it's that split from I see so and so doing this and they're telling me it works, away from
do
yourself.
it. Yes.
Right. And if like
Mm,
if you go through Money Awakening, and like one of the first things I teach, the first like inner circle, is to connect with your creative spirit, your intuition, your own guidance. If when you do that, there's a reason we start there. You can then recognize a strategy and be like, you know what, I really like that short little
mm,
window and it feels right for this particular offer. Do it. But
right.
what I see happening, of course, is most people like, oh, Jenny so and so made 100K in 13 seconds using this strategy.
Yes.
So I should mimic it. But like, you are here to be creative, and creativity is by definition unique. So
Mm,
you just can't plunk it on like that. Which is
yeah.
why, like, after I would love to be somebody who teaches strategy, like strategy in the sense of like, here's the technique. But
Yeah.
I know that it would make some people excel and some people just feel like Well, that was it. And it didn't work
Mm,
because I've been there, and that feeling, like I've made tons of money where you're like, oh my God, I don't want to do it again. Like it feels, it disconnects you from who you are. And like from a shamanic sense, I can guarantee that the way some people are selling is causing what I would call like soul loss, which is where it's kind
mm,
of, it's a scary word, but it's very normal in the sense of like, it's where you're turning your back on a part of yourself that's asking to be seen.
right.
That's all it really is. And then over time, like we just get distance. And that's the part that I can't stomach. That's why, like, I try not to respond to a lot because I mean, if you're familiar with human design,
I
like
am,
I'm a
yes.
man, yeah, like I'm a
Are you, you're a
manifester.
manifester and I am a
Yeah,
generator. There
there
we
you
go.
go. Like I am not built to really pay much attention to what's happening. Like I'm kind of, it's me in my cave, and I know that that's when my body feels happiest. But of course, there, like I'm human. There are times where like I see things and I'm like, oh my God, that feels harmful to me. That energy of, and that's me. Like if it works for them, great. But that energy of urgency and scarcity, there's this interesting little wedge of what I would call feminine marketing
Hmm.
that is kind of lifting itself up to be like, well, we're not doing bro marketing anymore. We're doing sensual feminine
Oh,
divinity
yes.
marketing, which is wonderful. Great.
Yes,
More the
yes.
merrier. But there's still that thread of urgency in there of like, I have the secret and here it is. And if you don't have it, you're freaking screwed.
And you have to wear lingerie and put
Oh
flowers
my
in
God.
your
Oh
hair,
yeah.
Jess, you
Well,
know? I
so
mean,
there was honestly, like, we all have bad days. There have been days where I go on Instagram and I'm like, should I just be marketing in a freaking bikini? Like, is that the, and again,
not even a
not to
bikini.
bash,
Just
like,
yeah, that's
yeah,
I know, and
like
I don't want
you
to
get
judge,
what
but
I'm
I
saying.
I know I
It
understand you
feels like it's the
fully
way the
because
world is going. Yeah.
yes, and I wonder like does everyone see this or is it just my
Yeah.
feed? And I think
It
it's
might just
probably
be our
just
feeds.
my
Yeah.
feed, you know,
I
our
will
feeds are very
say,
similar.
I recently went on like a mad unfollowing spree,
Yes.
and
Doesn't feel
my
good.
nervous system just, I was like, there
Ah,
you are, Jess. Like you're
same.
here again. And
Yes.
it has nothing to do with them. Absolutely nothing to do
Mhm.
with any of the, like there is a, again, I'm kind of tangential to the coaching industry. There is definitely a subset of people that I would describe as like probably not doing an ethical thing. But again,
Mhm.
their business, but I would
Yeah.
say it's a
Yeah.
small subset. The other stuff, it's just not for me. And it's not for my message and energy that I want to help people cultivate within
Yeah.
themselves
I mean, the
because it
message
doesn't
comes
feel
down
good.
to do you. Do
Yeah.
you. And I like this.
Yeah.
I wrote this down. No, no, there in your frequently asked questions. There was how can I make more money? And you've got how do we make more money? It is tapping into your full self. Your full
Yeah.
self equals your full expression
Yeah.
equals your full expansion so that growth comes. And
Yeah.
you talked about the soul parts leaving and
Hmm.
no wonder there are so many people looking for their purpose these days.
Yeah.
I feel so
Yeah.
many of us, and I put myself into that basket of feeling a little lost and what is my purpose, what is it?
Yeah.
And it is that your full self equals
Yeah,
your
your
full
full self.
expression.
And I mean, it's like that's like a really snappy little one liner. And of
Yeah,
course, like
it's
reclaiming your full self, that's a full time, like that's an entire job. That's an entire, like,
it
so I
is.
just want to be clear that it's not like a, like that's an FAQ. But
Oh,
we,
I just thought it was very I loved it.
well, it's a different like, again, there are strategies that like, oh, the trick to making money is an evergreen funnel, or the trick,
Yeah.
or a launch that does this. Sure, but I'm not concerned with helping people make money. Even though I'm like, technically I teach a lot of money stuff, I'm concerned with helping people create fulfillment um, in their creative life and business in a way that doesn't sacrifice their soulful integrity. And
Mhm.
what I mean
Mhm.
by that, like, and there's two kind of different camps of people that kind of work with me. There are the people who, like, from a shamanic perspective, I've explained a little bit. Like, a shaman, for example, will do something known as soul retrieval, which is they will go into the imaginal realm. As again, this is getting like spiritual, but here
Yeah,
we
I
go.
love it. I
They
love it. Go
go into
there.
the imaginal realm and they will help you retrieve soulful essence that,
Mm.
for whatever traumatic reason, big or small, has been left behind. And that's kind of the one view of it, the spiritual side. The scientific side is really just the emotional psychology stuff, which has been documented forever.
Mm.
Which, again, if you're not on board with the other stuff, you can certainly understand it. Like, oh, you know what? When I was 6 years old and my aunt told me that creatives can't make any money and I better be a freaking lawyer instead, I turned away from a portion of myself that desperately wants to be a painter.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
doing the inner work to reclaim that. That's what I help people do. And it's not that traumatic either. It doesn't need, that's the other thing. Like when we talk about like healing work and like leveling up and all of these things, there's that quantum urgency there sometimes in just the magnitude of it. Like
Yes.
it's going to be this big, hairy, like, oh
As if
my
small
God.
changes don't mean anything,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I just recently, yesterday, I had one of those tiny little micro shifts, in your business where you're like, oh, just a slight bit more clarity. And it was like, it reminds me of, when you're looking at a star or the moon in a telescope, because it's far away, like 1 degree and the thing's out of
Mm.
view again. It felt
Yeah.
like that. And
Ah.
I think that though we need to remember that those micro shifts, I call them inchworm action in my program, like those little inchworm actions on the inside, you can do something as big as like soul retrieval, whether it's the spiritual version of it or just you getting eyes on something. That's the way I think of it, like psychologically. I just tell people, recognize there's this part of myself that's been dying to be seen. And I believe from a business perspective, the minute we incorporate that person via whatever way feels good for you, again, your strategy, it's all up to you. That is where you find that expression. And then when you have that expression, that's where your money comes from because you are a creative. Like that's the pathway.
Yeah. It's beautiful. You have a gift with words, being an author, and of course that,
Mm,
goes into your
thank you.
posts and your how you write about yourself and your programs, and that comes out beautifully. There's something you wrote this morning that I copied and pasted here and it was about that concept of more, which
Mm,
resonated with me because in the past years I always felt I was always trying to
yeah,
get more. And I'm
yeah.
going to read it because it's not long, but it's so beautiful. If your money healing doesn't include the possibility of enough or the
Mhm.
sanctity of your own inner space, you're risking falling into the gravity of a creative black hole where you can sense that your true more is out there, but for some reason it's always out of reach. You'll feel it as a sadness, a missing, a deprivation of something that feels like yours, and possibly even a shame that you're living a life that feels almost parallel to the one calling you.
Hmm.
That I read it 3 times.
You know what's
I
funny?
went back.
So whenever I post something in the morning, it's like a first thing in the morning thought. It's almost like I hate the word channeled sometimes because it sounds a little like I can do this and you can't. It's
Yeah.
just a thought process for
Yeah.
me. But I very rarely have anything read out loud. So I'm like, oh,
You're
like
like,
I
that
forgot
sounds
I
damn
posted that.
good.
I
Jess,
forgot I posted that.
you're good with words. No, that stopped me in my tracks and I totally resonated with that because I have felt that and
Yeah.
my clients have felt that when is enough
When is
enough?
enough? Yeah.
Why are we striving to be more? Like, okay, if you're making 50,000, let's talk money. I know that's not good
Yeah.
enough. 100.
Moving those
We
goalposts.
used to
Yeah.
have that, all the coaches were talking about 6-figure salaries. Now all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's 7-figure.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, if you
Yeah.
are running a business and listening to this, the majority of solopreneurs are not making $1 million businesses.
No. And
And
some of them
the
don't want
majority
to.
and
Some
that's
don't want to.
okay. And
Yeah.
that's
Oh my God,
okay.
it's more
Like,
than okay.
but we
And that
feel
is
that
like
pressure,
because
right?
we see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And that it really does cut like a lot of, I hate to say it, but like a lot of the inner turmoil that we have on our healing journeys and our creative journeys, which to me, same damn thing, especially as business owners and creatives and stuff. A lot of that turmoil fully just comes from marketing. I
It
hate to
is
say it,
marketing. I
but
know.
it's
But
and I want to
if
be
I
clear
get
here,
caught up
like,
in it, just
oh, I know. Well, me
so many
too.
other people are. I get caught
I
up in
know.
it,
And
you
like
know?
I have like a bear trap in my head for this
Mm.
shit where sorry, stuff. I don't know if you're like
No,
a
you're
okay
allowed.
good.
You're allowed.
I have like a bear trap in my head for this stuff where like I can smell it out a mile away. And
Mm.
I still like there's still days you're like, maybe there is a secret that I know. Like, no, there's not. No, there's not. Like I have to cut that stuff off.
Yes.
But it's this idea of, again, when people say I want more, and this is with the caveat of I am excluding the idea of like I don't have enough to eat. I don't have enough to, the people that
Yes.
we are, obviously think of the Maslow, hierarchy of
Yeah.
needs. Some people do need more.
Yes.
They're not often on the internet listening to me, for example, like, and that's like what I do to try to help the planet is to kind of help people find their version of what that success is, right? But in general, the people that we're speaking to today, when they want more, it is often those parts of themselves they've turned away from. That's them knocking on the door, being like, listen, I want to be seen. I want to be a painter. I want to be this. I want to be this. I want to do 10 things at once, even though everybody tells me I freaking can't. And
Yeah.
it's by opening those doors in a strategic and loving and careful way, careful, not that it's scary, but like, gentle way. That is where we can ultimately find what is my version of enough and what is my version of more, because that's the other thing that we kind of forget. Like, and let's bring in like this idea of like ease, for example, right? Like, let it be easy, which again, wonderful thought in concept. And I'm
Wonderful.
on
Yes.
board. I'm on board in many regards. But what people are forgetting, and this is where like spiritual shamanic side is like, yes, that sounds good. But the scientist in me, the neuroscientist, is like, wait a second. Brains are literally evolved to enjoy a little bit of work, a little bit of play, and a little bit of rest.
Yes.
We will all like a nice like work is adaptive. We have evolved to want to work. So this idea of pushing, like you can have a life of just like, here you are on the beach and like
Yes.
collecting, that won't fly. Like if you're in burnout mode, that will sound amazing. And that's how you know. Like if somebody says like, what would you do if you had all the money in the world? And they're like, nothing. You're burnt out.
Yeah.
That's it. Because you will eventually.
Isn't that a good test?
Right? And I'm probably there right now.
I was there. Yes. This past
Yeah.
summer, like my husband said, what would you do right now if you did have money? I was like, I would go away by myself. And he's like,
Yeah.
without me?
And
I'm
that's
like,
a sign.
yeah, without you, without the
It's
kids,
a
without.
sign. And
Yeah.
when that, and again, I consider that, like if you consider the hierarchy of needs on a spiritual level, that's kind of one of the bases, right? Like, am I okay within myself? Am I getting too swept up in the world and like to bring in human design again? So I'm a manifester, but I only have two defined centers, two closed centers.
Yeah.
So the rest of me, I'm like a sponge. It's just
take the energy of
oh my
everybody
God.
else around you.
And I think like I read somewhere that like in your open centers, and again, as the scientist in me, I like human design for the fact that it can be a wonderful litmus test. When you read something, you're like, ooh, that's a part of me that I haven't recognized before and it resonates.
Yeah.
So that's where I leave it. Because I know people like, well, how can you buy it? Like, that's where I go with it. It's a personal thing. But I was reading somewhere that your open centers are the places where you've explored all of the like downsides and challenges of like not feeling enough in some way. And when I look at my own chart, I'm like, yeah, like I have felt it. I literally only have the throat defined and my emotional center. Like I'm basically just a manifester with a single message of being like, all of these horrible things that you felt, all of these emotions that you experience as blocks or obstacles. Like, baby, I've been there. I've been there. And there's a different way to try to deal with it. Well, even that idea itself of blocks, I use the term sometimes because it's like, it gets people on board with what I'm talking about. But like, this, like, I don't really believe blocks are a thing. I think they're just doorways into those parts of ourselves.
Well, aren't they? And I find them as teachers,
Yeah,
it can really hold us back if like, oh, and I was thinking of that today, like, oh, my money story is that X, Y, and Z. But if we're so caught up in that identity, of that block, it is a block.
Yeah.
We're not allowing ourselves to move past it.
Because it can be familiar. And like, that's why you said like, and like, I am all for money mindset. I don't use the term a lot because to me, mindset keeps you locked in one realm. And like in Money Awakening, I have 8 realms that need to be tended to in order to kind of enact transformation for whatever you want to create, right? So mindset for me, people get, and I'm sure you've seen this, where it's like, I'm doing all the right stuff. I'm thinking all the right things. I'm being positive. Why isn't it working?
Yeah.
Why isn't it me? Is there something wrong with me? And I'm like,
what am I doing wrong?
Right. Yeah. Nothing. You're just in one realm. You're in your freaking head. You are not a body. Like your body is not there to take your head to meetings. as Ken Robinson once said in a wonderful TED talk. Like, it's this idea, like I said, I love the concept of thinking about money, but to me, money mindset, we should almost just think of it like, life consciousness, like abundance mindset
Mm.
or abundance consciousness or wealth consciousness is to me life consciousness. And like you said, when we put a story on it, because that's often what we do is like, what's
Yeah.
your money story? And like, it's great to know that. But then what do we do when we have like, think of it like this: the person who is trying to deal with their money stuff, they feel like they're treading water, right? So what do we do? Okay, you're treading water, there's sharks all around you, this freaking sucks. Do your money story. So you build your money story, like, there it is. That becomes your island. Now you're out of the treaded water, you're no longer doing this and you're okay, but you're stuck on this island of your money story being like, well, you
Ah,
suck at this, you suck
yes.
at this, you suck at this. And it's like, okay, now what? Which is why, like,
Ah,
I will go as far as to say, like, I think the traditional way that money mindset is taught is a fantastic foundation. You got to get people stopping treading water. But I think it can very quickly, for intelligent, creative people, all of whom are the people listening, can
mm,
turn into a new set of rules that holds people back. Like,
yes.
I don't agree with a lot of it. I think it's like, it's right to a point. And if something is only right to a point, in my mind, scientist here, it's not
Mhm.
good enough. It's not good enough. We can do
Mm.
better than that, which is again where I would encourage people, like, let's get back in the water and let's be comfortable. Let's learn how to swim,
Yes.
and let's go
Yeah.
deeper and deeper and deeper. And down there, you can build those foundations. I'm losing the analogy now. The metaphor's
That's
crumbling,
okay. That's
but like,
okay. That's
you
good.
can
No, I
build
love
those
it. I love it.
foundations.
What can we're gonna a little tangent here.
Yeah.
Something about your profile has always intrigued me, because I have followed some shamans and whatnot, and
Mm.
you've brought that up today. Can you explain a little bit more? Are you a shaman? Have you worked with shaman? Like, where does that?
Yes.
Are you allowed to say that? I always like, you have
So
a shaman.
that's
You
the
have to be
thing.
an indigenous person, but perhaps you are
Yeah,
indigenous.
I am actually.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm Métis.
Okay.
But in so it goes back and forth sometimes. In general, if you were doing shamanic work, it is generally seen as more appropriate to be seen as a shamanic practitioner, right? Because
Okay.
a shaman is typically, and again, there is no hard and fast rule, but
Okay.
typically a shaman is something that is designated upon you from your community. So in
Right.
my case, having done training, having done initiations, like, not a fun time. Like, it is not something that I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, I'm a shaman today because I did a whatever. That stuff,
Yeah.
I'm like,
No.
like, just sidestep that. But because it's not, I don't know a single shamanic practitioner or a shaman, however you want to view it, who has not been like almost thrust into that world.
Right.
My first initiation in terms of this shamanic side of things was a near death experience, and it did not
Wow.
get easier. Like, let's put it that way. So
Mm.
now I do want to be clear, though. In my view, I know there's people who are like, can I like dip into that world? Is that okay?
Mm.
And I want to say wholeheartedly yes, because there is a version. First of all, shamanism is the oldest form of spirituality on the planet. So if you are interested in astrology, human design, tarot cards, crystals, plant medicine,
Yeah, I'm raising my hand
anything,
to all of
yeah,
them. Yes.
all of these things, shamanism is the foundation. So
Mm.
it is the grandfather or grandmother, right?
Okay.
It's the ancestor of everything spiritual that we do today. Absolutely everything. And it is not a religion. That should also be
No,
said.
it is
It
not
is
a religion.
just a way of seeing the world. And I've always
Mm.
had a shamanic viewpoint. I was raised, like I said, I was indigenous, but like raised quite, you know, white, so to speak.
Mhm.
And I look the way I do. So there's a lot of assumptions there.
Yes, yeah.
Um, but it's part of it. It almost is funny now when I think of like the dichotomy between me being spiritual and scientific. It makes sense to me that there's also that little interplay there of
Yes.
stuff.
Right?
Um,
Yeah, because
but
you
it's true,
both
right?
sides of the
People
coin.
people make,
You
and you
Yes.
get, well, in Canada especially, right? Being Métis. But I also want to say that there is a version of shamanism. Every culture on the planet has one. So no
Mhm.
matter who you are, it will look different, perhaps, than what I was taught, as of Mohawk descent, or what somebody else might be
Right.
taught of, whatever. Like, but every single culture has these beliefs of an animal guide, for example.
Yes.
Every
Yeah.
cult, if you go back far enough, every culture has these beliefs
Mm.
of earth medicine and plant medicine. So if you are a listener and you're thinking like, am I like allowed to do this?
Yes.
What I would recommend is start working with people or exploring fields known as core shamanism, which is basically the concept of like somebody went through and took all of the things that are in all of the fields of shamanism, no matter who you are, which again,
Yeah.
animal guides, the idea of 3 worlds, 3 realms to
Mhm.
explore, all of these different things, they're everywhere. And that's kind of, I will describe it as like fair game, if you know what I mean. Like they will resonate with every single person, which
Mhm.
is why, like in Money Awakening, my program, there is such a deep spiritual and like earth-based element to the work
Yeah.
we do, because I knew no matter who you are on the planet, guaranteed that element will resonate with you.
Mm.
Every single even if they're the citiest of all city folk, every single human body will resonate with the concepts of like ocean, waterfall,
Yes.
land. Like
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
just in our blood, which is like, if I were to think of like, like what's your secret? That's one of them. It's just, I just feed that energy in and people are like,
Well,
wow, I'm
you've
amazed.
tapped
I'm so
into
grounded.
this. Yes, and I think that's why I resonate with you so much as well, and your marketing the way, but you bring it, it's who you are. It's bringing
Yeah.
that,
Oh,
especially that, and
it's always
shamanism
been
for me,
me.
that nature aspect to it, the
Yeah.
animals and this, that is the world. I love that.
And
It's
I just, yeah, it
mm,
is. I want people to feel like they can play in that world. I would
mhm.
absolutely say be respectful. Do not think that you are instantly a guru for, but that's not
Yeah.
a normal, people are not normally doing that. It's just,
Mm.
I know that one of my roles in my business, even though like shamanism and spirituality is kind of like one of just it's kind of the water that we're in as we're doing this stuff. I know that one of my roles is to almost revolutionize with reverence. Like I don't
Yeah.
want people to feel like, can I say that I have like an animal spirit that comes to visit me if I look
Well,
like this? Like, yes,
what
you
an amazing
can.
question, because I was like, oh, I said it the other day. I was like, oh, the heron for me, that's
Yeah,
my spirit animal. I was like, oh my
yeah.
God, no, my power animal.
No,
Oh,
that
my
and that's the
totem. Is it?
thing. I
Oh my God,
think,
I just crossed the line. And my
yeah.
children, I was talking to my kids and they're like, just mom, you're like, oh, just say you like herons. And I said, yeah, I love
Yeah.
herons. But
It's the reverence, right?
it is,
Like
it is.
I do believe.
What's
I
the
actually
energy?
believe.
What do you mean by that? What's
Exactly.
the
If you
energy are we
say
bringing to
like,
this?
I've heard people like, J-Lo is my spirit animal. That's going to
Oh,
give me pause, right? Like that feels like more of
yes.
an appropriation, like maybe not so much. But
Mm,
when like I have people, when like people who are not of that descent, people who are not, well versed in shamanism being like, I keep having dreams of, heron or hawk
yes.
or whatever. And like, what does it mean? And it's like, well, it's
Yes.
going to be personal for everybody. That's unfortunately, I would not recommend like, oh, go look it up. You can,
Right.
but there's so many other things that come into play.
Yeah.
I just want people to feel like they're a lot, like this planet is a wonderland of
Mm.
knowledge and guidance. And all shamanism is really is making the assumption and having the belief that everything around you has something to tell you. That's it.
Mm.
And again, you can look at that from like you can believe it from a spiritual perspective, or you can just say to yourself from a brain perspective, I bet you there's things for me to learn here if I take on this perspective for a bit.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Like if I sat somebody down who was absolutely not spiritual and said, okay, theoretically, if you look at this tree or this waterfall, what feelings might it bring up for you? What message might
Mhm.
you get? Maybe you're just tapping into your own subconscious. And for me, that's good
Right.
enough. And that
Yeah.
I think is why so many people like I have an ethologist in Money Awakening right now. Like she's an animal behaviorist, like full on science like me. And I think that's why she feels comfortable there, because this
Mhm.
stuff is not like, people think that spirituality, especially at kind of the levels that we're talking about, is new age, but it's not. It is
Mm.
stone age, and it is in our blood. It is in our blood. And I think when we approach it, I actually don't think, and this is again another big tangent, but like I know, and I'm sure you've noticed this, like a lot of the marketing around spirituality is all up here in the
It
clouds, right?
is, but we're
Angels and
down
like,
here.
right. And that is why I think people are so, when they get in kind of my orbit, they're like, I just feel so like grounded and
Yes.
peaceful. And it's like, yes, that's what I want people to know, that spirituality, it can be up here, but you can't live there. And there
I
was
love that
so,
you are
so much
saying
down
this.
here.
I love that you are saying this, Jess, because I think that's so important because again, that aspiration of having more and
Yes,
in the
higher,
spiritual
higher,
circles,
higher.
we have to ascend. Am I ascending? Am I ascending? And I'm like,
Yep,
oh my gosh, another talk of ascension. Bring
I
it
know.
down into your life. And I had the thought this past week in my own life saying, I am actually a very spiritual person because
Yep,
I tapped myself on the shoulder. I have brought the concepts of that into the life I am
exactly,
living now.
exactly.
And I was beating myself up a little bit. I started a new contract and haven't had as much time to meditate. And I was like, I need to meditate. And I'm like, Sylvia, you are
You.
meditating
That's
in
right.
the way you take the subway, where you're just not looking at your phone and you are just at peace. You are doing that as you walk, from
Yep,
the subway to your house, in the way you speak to your children,
yep. The
um,
way you
you know,
speak to
to
yourself.
yourself. And I was
Yeah.
like, that is the key. So I'm
Because
so
that's one of
happy
those
that you brought that
rules.
about
It's one of
because
those
yes,
rules, right? The
I
the enlightenment rules. And
yeah,
again, there's a time and place for those people and for that work. That's not my lane. My
yeah.
lane here, again, like the entire lens that I see
Mm,
everything I do from is from the earth and nature. And again,
yes.
when you realize that everything has a message for you, whether or not that is objectively true, doesn't matter.
Mm.
And like I'm a well-trained, like fully published scientist. I've got all the, a card carrying
You are an
scientist and
anomaly,
skeptic.
Jess.
Like,
Yes.
but like that is enough because again, it is about what feels resonant to you.
Mm.
And I like people say, like, well, how can you be both a scientist and a whatever? Like, I'll tell you why. Any good scientist is at most an agnostic because
Yeah.
they know that we don't know what we don't know. And
Right.
I also know from the direct revelation and experiences of what helps my nervous system, what helps my results, what helps me tap into like what feels right to me.
Mm.
There is going to be a spiritual side of that. And there's also a scientific side. And quite frankly, a lot of the scientific stuff that is put onto spirituality right now is wrong. It's just wrong. And I'm like,
And
there
you
you
see
go.
it. You have those eyes to see it.
Yeah, and I
And you
don't
come
say
out
anything, but like,
well, you come out with these doozies sometimes that go against what, people are saying, and I loved one of them recently was that, "Well, we don't really know if the universe has
no,
our back." And I'm
we
like,
don't.
"Oh my gosh, no." My whole
I
premise
know.
is like, the universe has my back. And here Jess is telling me that, well, we don't really know that. But if it makes you feel good and brings you into that creative energy, then that's
Yes.
a good thought to have.
It
And I'm like,
allows you to be
okay,
on
but
that
that's really, I've
track.
been thinking about that like for the whole week now since you posted that.
But
And I'm
here's
like,
the thing, like, in a way, that to me makes it more powerful. It's kind of
yes,
like saying, like, I'm waiting for the miracle of, like, myself to
yes,
sprout wings and fly, whereas we're overlooking the miracle that freaking trees give us oxygen.
yeah,
That's enough.
bringing it back
One of the things I
down.
can remember
Yeah,
being really young and looking around at nature because, like, I was obsessed with, like, documentaries and David Attenborough and all this stuff.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I became a zoologist, like, I love it so much, and looking around and being like, "Why aren't people just, like, in awe all
Amazed.
of the time?"
Yeah.
And like you're saying, like, I'm not saying, like, we can't really know if the universe has our back. That is a faith and a belief and a trust. We can have that internally, but I don't think that that negates the incredible power and beauty of that universe and what it can
Mm,
feel like. I literally teach people to partner with the universe. I literally do that in Money Awakening. I work with, like, here's different ways and strategies that you can do this and cultivate that dialogue. But it is also okay if you don't really buy that sometimes or ever, because the thing about our amazing brains is if you start shaping how you want to see yourself or how you want to see what's available to you, you will
mm,
start seeing it. And
yeah.
that's what, like, and again, like, I am not trying to downplay it. There are people who would hear me say that and be like, oh my God, I've lost, like, I
Unfollow,
unfollow.
unfollow. That's
Yeah, and,
right.
like,
Yeah.
fair enough. But again,
No.
my role is to occupy the scientist and is to occupy the spiritual side and put them together for the sake of the people who are my people. And I know my people sometimes wake up and think like, am I just freaking delusional? I have
You
like
are always
in
in
their
my
gifts,
mind. You
like
are always,
everything.
I am your target audience there, Jess, because I wake up going, oh my God, people must think I'm crazy. My
Well,
husband is
and
like,
people, the problem is people think that about their own. Like, I have an amazing friend. She's an incredible healer. And like, we have these conversations where she's like, and I know objectively what she does is incredible. I know
yeah,
it is. But she's still thinking, like, well, but like from a scientific side, it's like, right. And I think it's actually better and more ethical to not be the person who's saying the absolute of like, I'm doing this with your DNA. Frankly, if you hear that from somebody, my vote is run.
run,
Like, do you
go
know what I
away.
mean? Like,
Yes, of course.
I do what I would describe as some of the deepest work with people,
Yeah.
but we cannot say like, oh, I'm reaching into your soul right now and I'm doing whatever. All of these things are wonderful. I call it in Money Awakening poetic vision, right?
Mm.
Like we have these, think of like Mary Oliver, right? Those poets who just have a way of capturing essence of what's going on in our lives via words. A lot of what I see people doing in these, this is awful to say, but I'm going to say it. A lot of what I see people doing in their marketing in the spiritual community is they are mistaking beautiful and wonderful poetic vision and analogy and metaphor for something literal. And I think that the interpretation is if it's not like a concrete quantum little digit that I'm playing with, it's not as meaningful. And that is again where I'm looking around being like, you guys don't understand. It is as meaningful, if not more, to allow that process to be mysterious,
Mm.
to allow that process to be emotional, or like just helping somebody feel certain emotions in a helpful, gentle way. That is just as meaningful as like, I'm inside your quantum whatever and I'm picking up this thing. Like, okay,
Yes.
that's again from a perspective of poetic vision. I'm all on
Mm.
board. But from a perspective of like, I'm the single trained person who can,
Yeah. No,
again,
no,
like
no,
that is
no.
where I'm really grateful to have that science side, because otherwise I'd be spending money left, right, and center. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
please fix my insides. It's like nobody can do
Well,
that for
again, it's
you.
going back to that looking outwardly for someone to like you said, to
Yes.
fix us. And a lot of it,
Yeah.
we get caught in that trap because, oh, someone else, they
Yeah.
must know. Look at them, and what we see
Well,
from
and I
the
think there's this
outside.
interesting I'm really glad you brought this up. So we have, I actually think that that is a remnant from what I would call like scientific culture, because I've heard people say
Mm.
like only you can heal yourself, which on these levels that we're speaking 100%. But at the same time, sometimes only a surgeon can take out my
Yes,
appendix,
exactly.
and allowing
Yes.
those things to be true. Because what do we, like my mother for example, she is an incredibly strong woman, but she has all of these autoimmune diseases, like just
Mm.
awful, like one of
Yeah.
those, just the shamanic road, we would say, right?
Mm.
And for somebody like that, if somebody told her like, oh well, the source of your healing is you and this, you have this because of this and this, I beg your pardon. Like,
Mm.
and that is again why the earth matters, because we are made of stuff, actual, not just energy, but stuff. And sometimes stuff goes wrong. And I
Right.
hate the idea of somebody being like, well, I have this disablement or this disease or this even lot in life. I was born in a country where poverty is rampant. And like, then to
Mm.
say to that person, like, your mindset though, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
again, that's where I think like holding both realms equally. Yes, we have the 5D experience of the spiritual and all of this beautiful quantum shit, but we also have our 3D human lives.
Mm.
And the work of a shaman is to help you heal on that spiritual, emotional level. But the work of somebody who works with like tissues and bodies and stuff, it's kind of like living all up here. If you try to solve all your problems up in the ether, you might solve many of them. But
Yeah.
sometimes you need to put a cast on, or sometimes you need to get a tooth pulled, or a filling or
Right.
something, or get
Yeah.
glasses. Like not every problem can be solved up here, because
Ah,
we're not meant to just occupy up there. We're meant to be
right.
all of these things, you know?
Yeah. Jess,
I
it's
get
been
really into
so
this.
I know you do, and I could just go on all day and chat with you. I have so many more questions, but I will let you go. Thank you so much for
Thank you for having
sharing.
me. This was awesome. We could do this every day and I'd be
Oh, I
happy.
totally could. This is what lights me up. It really
Me
does. And I have
too.
to delve into that more, I think, because I forget that this is
Yeah.
what I love to do. I have put on the video here, jesskeating.com. If you are interested at all about Jess's work with the Money Awakening program, I believe it's going to be, or it is, an evergreen program
Yep.
that you can join at all times. really go and look into this. It's I can't wait to take it. It is on my list of courses to
Awesome.
take.
Anytime it's open
Yeah,
for
and
you.
read her. If you have kids, get your, even if you don't have kids, get her
Yeah.
books. They are
Read the
great.
books.
They are so fun. What's coming up for you, Jess? What's next for you?
Oh my gosh, everything, everything, everything. Right now, you know what it feels like is I feel like I have built this amazing like wonderland with Money Awakening.
Yeah.
But I also know that because it is such a I will call it like quite a groundbreaking or different view
Mm,
of creativity and money. And it's not a money program, it's a creativity and you program.
yes.
But money is the thing that like I'm trying to awaken. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is like I'm not trying to awaken money, the concept. I'm trying to awaken this idea of wealth that can look entirely different from the way people see. So
Mm-hmm.
I have this program now, and my next role I can tell is to help build the kind of tasters for people. Like I'd love to make some more digital offerings that are smaller, like 50 bucks and
Yeah.
under, just to
Yeah.
kind of allow people to play in that world. So that is what's coming up next for
Dip
me.
their toes.
Dip
Love
it
it.
in. Yeah.
Love
And
it.
I'm very excited to say I have been sitting for a long time on this with like the next bigger move for me. I was
Mm.
thinking of a podcast for a while. Every marketing coach told me to do a
Ah, do a
podcast.
podcast. Yes.
I'm not doing a podcast. I am doing a YouTube channel.
Yay.
I want
Wonderful.
something, yeah, that people can go and just like binge watch all of
Yeah.
this like grounding stuff and feel better about their path. And again, like as creatives and entrepreneurs and spiritual ish people, like you don't need to be a spiritual person to work with me. You can be, but anybody who's making something that comes from like, I have to do this, I am here to help those people eliminate what they see as obstacles
Mm.
so that they can do that in a way that feels good and grounded and not full of the chaos that I will
Yeah.
say is often out there. So that is what's
Love
next
it.
for
I
me.
can't wait to see that. Thank you. Thanks again so much. Thank you for listening. I know this was like a 2-in-1. We got a 60 minutes out of Jess this week.
Hooray. I'm a manifester. It's going to happen. That's not the first time that's happened. People are like, oh, it was supposed to be half an hour, but you didn't shut up. I'm like,
That
yeah.
okay, that's okay. I'm a one to go with the flow. And thank you so much for listening. You know, we come out with an episode every 2 weeks. Thank you for liking and subscribing. The more likes and subscribes we have, you know that more people can listen. And we are so appreciative. We will catch you on the next episode. Until then, be well. And I look forward to hearing from you all. Bye.